Okay, I've done it. Recording in progress. Okay, I've done it. Okay, Hare Krishna. So welcome to class number 75 on Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. And we are on chapter 28, finishing chapter 28. And remember, we left last week on a bit of a cliffhanger. Anyone can remember what that cliffhanger was concerning Bhaktivinoda Thakur?
He rejected his spiritual master.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, his spiritual master rejected him.
Yeah, because he about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's
Okay,
birthplace.
yeah. So just for context, the discussion was in regards to the philosophy of the Radha Kund Babajis, as opposed to the philosophy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and our Gaudiya Vaishnava line coming through him. So they discredit Bhaktivinoda Thakur, saying he was rejected by his initiating guru, Vipina Vihari Goswami, his name. Yeah. And they also criticize, obviously, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for changing the Acharya's teachings, Rupa Goswami, D. Goswami's teachings, and what they mean. We'll be explaining that today. And again, they consider ISKCON part of an upper sampradaya. Now, this is all spoken of in one book by I think it's passed away actually now, a B.G. Narasingha, excuse me, which is a small book. You can download it if you want. He gets into this criticism of the Radha Kund Babajis. Specifically, there's a lot of background information given about Vipina Vihari Goswami, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If you want to read that, you can easily download it. You can let me know after, and I can send you the link if you want. Now,
yes, please, Murli Prabhu, if you could send us the link, thank you.
Okay, I'll send you the link. Yeah.
He's a surfing guru.
Sorry?
He used to have the surfing ashram.
Huh?
Is he the guru who had the surfing ashram?
Has what ashram?
A surfing ashram. He was a surfer.
Oh, well, he doesn't. Well, no, well, if he was, he isn't that.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, he used to have an ashram in South India.
Okay. Yeah, he was, I think he's passed away. He was quite respected from outside in ISKCON in a lot of ways. A very scholarly devotee.
Yeah, very scholarly. I've seen some of his videos. They're very scholarly.
Yeah. So one critic or one thing which came across when I read his book, so if you do read it, which is not in line of ISKCON, he says, so they say that, there's his prediction that a great Vaishnava will come and spread the Dharma of Vaishnavism throughout the whole world. They say that's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he's the one who spread, and he happened to send one disciple, which happens to be Prabhupada. So that's a bit of a difference in how they view Prabhupada, So that will come out when if you read that book. So you just have to kind of read through that. But without getting into that controversy, let's try and concentrate on one controversy at a time. Let's get away from the chocolate controversy.
Very true indeed.
Get into something perhaps a bit more worthwhile.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we know the reason why Vipin Vihari Goswami stated, the reason given is because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he identified as the yoga pit, the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared, as being in Mayapur and not in the Navadvip side. yeah, the Navadvip town side, but in Mayapur, where we go now. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur did that after many years, actually, for a long time of studying scripture and studying ancient maps, because it's a bit delicate, because each time the Ganges floods, it forms new barriers or new boundaries. So it's not always so easy. That's why it was lost. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur did quite some extensive study in all the local libraries and asking all the residents of all the temples, and did quite an exhaustive study. And as we know, it was confirmed by Jagannath Das Babaji. Yeah, as we won't get a whole story, but he went into ecstasy when he came to the spot of the yoga pit. So really, it reflects Vipin Vihari's standing rather than the so-called spiritual inadequacy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It proves really his side, you know, the fault, because his disciple, I think there's a story where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur also makes it quite clear that he considered Bhaktivinoda Thakur much more advanced than his Diksha Guru. Yeah, but the Babajis, they all side with Vipin Vihari Goswami, and they will criticize Bhakti Siddhanta and criticize also, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Yeah. So now let me just go back a bit here. Now, also the Radha Kund Babajis, we've got quite a bit of ground to cover today, so I'm probably going to have to push, go a little bit quick on this first part. But they also critic Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for creating his own version of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and especially in regards to Raganuga Bhakti. And what we're speaking of will become more evident as we go through today. Now basically, just summarizing, we know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and consequently Srila Prabhupada's, could call, say, formulation of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, based also on Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion, is a means and a ways for obtaining perfection. Yeah. Now they have issues with that. They say their way is the only way. Basically, the essence is that Lord Chaitanya, his whole mission of coming is to spread and attract people to come back to Godhead, yeah, to actually take up devotional service. Yeah, Lord Chaitanya's, Jiva Doya, mercy to conditioned souls. So like they don't really see that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is fulfilling Lord Chaitanya's mission, actually to give Raj Bhakti to the world. Yeah, and they criticize, of course, if they criticize Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they definitely criticize ISKCON and all ISKCON's followers. Yeah. For them, ISKCON, and also not just ISKCON, but the Gaudiya Mat is just all about Vaikuntha Bhakti. That's what it's about. Some of them say it's Vaikuntha Bhakti, and some of them say that it's complete speculation. Yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and ISKCON, it's a complete deviation. Yeah. Now I'm going to go skip these details here because I'm just looking if they're important to mention. Yeah, perhaps we'll just read through this part to make it a little bit quicker. So, for instance, they see enthusiastic preaching as just a pious activity that will eventually bring them to Raganuga, which is what the Babajis practice. Yeah. Now they think what they say is that the preachers will be, by their sukriti, by their pious activity, they will at some point retire to, or they will achieve perfection if they retire to Radha Kund and take initiation from a Babaji. Yeah. And engage in Nirjam Bhajan and speak only about Astakali Leela. Yeah. So that they will say at that time they can become real Rasika devotees. Now, I won't mention names. When I was reading this again this evening, one of our, I don't want to mention names, so I'm not going to get right into it, but one of our prominent kind of the past ISKCON sannyasis who was living in Vrindavan done exactly that. He left ISKCON, took Babaji Vesh and a new name, you know. I won't get into more detail. So these things are going on. Yeah.
I just will probably ask you something.
Yes.
What you just now said, I understand, but people like us, we don't really know. We are naive. What's happening is quite.
I'm just going to turn my phone off.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, airplane mode. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, go on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like us, you know, we don't really know ins and outs much about it. So we are just following the Prabhupada. It's just for us to aware of it, who is it, and we are aware when we do go that
Yeah,
we do understand. In that way, I'm not trying to be asking, but it'd be quite nice for me to know. That's my question, really.
Yeah, I could tell you after because this is being recorded.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I don't.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, that'll be lovely. Thank you, Mali.
I can mention it after. Yeah. Now, again,
I ask you about this on the same subject a little bit.
Yes.
In Vrindavan, quite a few years ago when I go for Kartik, then I used to go to Radha Kund as well to listen to an ISKCON guru, and you go, and it's all about, at that time, you know, it was all about Radharani's here, Radharani's this, that. I didn't quite connect at that time. And I'm still thinking about that maybe I wasn't at the right platform, or I was not, you know, maybe I shouldn't be listening that or whatever. So is that kind of, I'm still confused with that point. So is that wrong or?
Well, no, it's wrong. It's especially in Vrindavan, everyone and everything is there. So we have to be a little bit discriminating about who we listen to. And the best thing to do is you should get permission before you go to listen to, especially if you're going on a regular basis. You should consult with your spiritual master first, because what you're doing is you're actually taking shiksha. So you should always consult with a senior devotee a senior ISKCON in good standing devotee or devotees. You know, what do you think? I'm hearing from so and so, especially if your spiritual master's present. You know, that generally should be the etiquette.
To do it, okay.
Yeah.
I used to go all the way from Vrindavan to Radha Kund to listen to the class and come back. You know, I was like, but somehow it faded.
Anyway, these points we're bringing up here next will kind of highlight what the difference is. Okay. You know? So now Bhaktivinoda Thakur Now, well, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains in one book that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Swarup Damodar Goswami in the confidential knowledge of spontaneous devotional service, or the path of spontaneous devotional service. So it's there. It was instructed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Swarup Damodar Goswami. So to the exclusion of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So it's there, and that's related, I think, in the Jaividharma, you know. Now then, Swarup Damodar Goswami, receiving these instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he made notes in his diary. Now, the notes he made were on two aspects of such worship. Now, I read this again this evening just before, so I could be very clear of what is being explained. So in his diary, he made notes on two aspects of worship. So here's the first, here's one: esoteric, internal, okay, antapanta, and exoteric, external, bahipanta. Now, I bet you're thinking like I was thinking when I first read this. I thought, what is that? What's the difference between esoteric and esoteric and exoteric? I've heard my spiritual master use these terms before, so I was quite interested to kind of really study this a bit more and find out what it's referring to. Now, from Swarup Damodar Goswami, Verkreshwara Pandit, he's the one who would dance, isn't it, for 21 hours, isn't it? Is that right? Verkreshwara Pandit, might have got that wrong, but so he received this one here. He received, oh, that one's good. He received this one here, the external. And now the teachings he received was recorded by a Dhanand Chandra Goswami. And that's in one book which he wrote, called Shigora Govinda Charana Smarana Padati. Now, don't worry, if you're still a little bit confused, things will become more clearer. Now, Raghunath Das, he received this one, the internal path. And he recorded that in books such as Vilapakusmanjali and Manashiksha. Probably a lot of you are familiar with Manashiksha. Yeah, and some of you also probably Vilapakusmanjali. So we're clear? So Verkreshwara Pandit received this from Swarup Damodar Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami was taught this path, the internal, antapanta. Now, here's the difference between the two. Oh, I put my... I put my on airplane mode, it's still ringing. Okay, so so the difference between the two. Now here's the difference between the two. Let's get focused again. Yeah, is that the exoteric teachings means this? What this one means? It means that one cultivates Raj Bhakti through an explicit, I'm just reading here, process of spontaneous worship involving body, mind, and senses. In other words, it's an external process of Raganuga sadhana. That's what the Radhakund Babajis do. Yeah. Now, please note that it's not completely unbonafide. It's given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Swarup Damodar Goswami, who then gave it to Verkreshwara. Did I get it right? Yeah, for Verkreshwara Pandit. Yeah. Everyone's following so far? Yes, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
trying to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Trying, Prabhu, trying.
Me as
Honestly.
well. So now, in contrast to that one, the internal, esoteric, is the teachings that cultivates spontaneous devotional service while engaging the body, mind, and senses in regulative Vaidhi Bhakti. That's what it means by internal. And that's what we've been saying a lot of times, that the cultivation of Raganuga Bhakti is an internal affair. But the Radhakund Babajis do it immediately as an external practice. Yeah. Generally we're following this one. Yeah. You find now you're seeing the difference, yeah?
Yeah, is it right? Internal is sort of better, because
Yeah.
in inner you feeling the exchange of, you getting the bhav inside rather than external. Am I right, Muli Prabhu?
Kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Let's just kind of go, because, yeah, just kind of hold on a minute. We'll just explain a bit more. So,
Just
Okay,
one quick
thank you.
question. This
Yeah.
esoteric, you said Raghunath Goswami, right?
yeah, the
External. I'm trying to figure out Raghunath Goswami and Vaikeshwara Pandit. I'm
Pandit,
trying to
yeah.
figure out the different devotees.
Yeah. Perhaps I
Yeah.
should.
That's
I
I'm
was thinking
seeing
to
why.
put Raghunath Das Goswami here and Vakeshwara Pandit here.
Yeah, next time. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But anyway, this is just here. This is
Mhm.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yes,
This is Radhakund Babaji's.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Radhakund
yes.
Babaji's say that this is a deviation.
Mhm.
Yeah. They say only this exists. This is Apasampadaya. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the difference between that's their issue, or that's our issue with them, and that's their issue with us. Yeah. So the present day Babajis, they follow external. That's it. They follow this one, and we follow Bhaktisiddhanta,
Internal.
which follows this one. Yeah. Now this one, it centers, as we've already explained, exclusive practice of what we've been speaking about, Nam Bhajan at Radhakund. Yeah. And we aim to engage conditioned souls in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. So one is also can be termed, what's another term we can give these? What's the name for someone who's
Sadhana Bhakti.
no, whose exclusive mood of worship is just concerning themselves?
Bhajananandi.
Yeah. So this is Bhajananandi. This is the difference between Bhajanandi and Gosdiyanandi. Now,
Yeah.
Maharaj mentions that in their original form, we're just remembering it, both of these come from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah, both of these come. That's why you have to be careful, because if you read, for instance, if you read Jaividharma, it describes this one to quite a large extent. Yeah, so you might be misled. Yeah, you can all, you might misunderstand and try and adopt this one, because this one, generally, we are devotees very careful, so this will not be adopted, at least definitely not until the stage of bhava, until one is purified of all anantas. Anyway, that we discussed a few times. But so both are in their original forms, they are authorize. Now, the question which I think is also getting at the point that Sunita Priya was raising, which of the two paths is better? As Maharaj says here, for tolerating the onslaughts of Kali Yuga, you know, which is the best one to practice today? Yeah. Now, I think we all kind of know where we're going with this. The answer
Yes, yes,
speaking for itself. Now, history has shown just that unfit teachers, those are not qualified. Yeah. Basically, history has shown that this path has been corrupted to a large extent. Yeah. And it's more difficult to perfect. It's very limited who can practice it, and more difficult to perfect. Now, it's also prone to be imitated. Now, those who take to this path, they will follow the example of Haridas Thakur, who lived in seclusion and dressed as a Paramahamsa and chanted japa all day. You know, that's what Haridas Thakur did. But interesting, he also preached as well. That part they leave out. Just that part they conveniently leave out. He was preaching very, very enthusiastically with Lord Nityananda. Yeah, wonderful pastime in that regard. Yeah. Now, a lot of persons, it can sound quite attractive. So some persons, they take up this path in order to be known as great devotees. So they're attracted to that. Yeah. And unfortunately, foolish people will accept them as advanced because of the practice that they're doing. Yeah. Oh, they must be advanced. They got dreadlocks on their head and they live in Radha Kund. You know, they must be advanced because they chant, you know, they're doing Astakali Leela. Maybe, but maybe not as well. Yeah. So, let's read this paragraph here. Even sincere aspirants who seek inner development easily become distracted by the kind of attention that comes to them by adopting the practice of great devotees. Yeah. So they're trying to imitate Haridas Thakur, and I'm sure we don't have to be reminded is what Prabhupada said about that. Because some of his disciples reading about Haridas Thakur, they was inspired also to copy and do the same. Yeah, but Prabhupada said we shouldn't imitate Haridas Thakur. Yeah. I think there's a story of one disciple who actually took Babaji Vesh and was living in a tree. Anyway, won't go into details, but
yes,
it didn't work out.
yeah.
Yeah. Now let me read this here as well. By contrast, the behavior of those who take to the esoteric path, that's Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada, and us, yeah, follows that of regulative devotees who are living society. Yeah, we don't all go to Radha Kund or whatever. Yeah, we dress according to our situation. Say, well, so we work at least to a large degree within an institute of society, say Vanashram. And now Maharaj describes this behavior as unpretentious, like you're not trying to make, for instance, just say if next week I went to Radha Kund to chant 64 rounds a day, you know, in one sense, it's the other path of just doing your, you know, just going up wherever you are, because the behavior is unpretentious, so it's less attractive to those seeking name and fame. Yeah. So it's less likely to corrupt honest sadhakas. Did you follow that line of logic there? It's kind of, it sounds quite a interesting. Oh, so-and-so's gone to Radha Kund. Wow. He's just wearing white and he's gonna, he's chanting 64 rounds a day and meditates on Astik Kali Leela. But the other path, you may be a housewife or working in Tesco's. So the other path can often be attractive to those who are seeking actually name and fame. Yeah.
Internal, external.
Yeah. So now Maharaj, there's a question he raises here is, why is the esoteric? Let me see if I can do this here. Let me see if this works. Oh, I can't see that anyway. Let me try again. Yeah. Why is the esoteric path more difficult to perfect than the esoteric path? So these two words, you have to kind of keep a track on what each one means. Yeah. Now, on the one hand, the esoteric path demands, well, what does it demand? It means complete renunciation, yeah, of all material activities, yeah. And you have to be it's quite austere, yeah, you have to be fully dedicated, so it's quite austere. Now, those who practice it must be, thus its practitioners must from the outset be highly qualified and free from their bad habits. Now, on the other hand, to actually practice it properly, the path that we follow, devotees can stay where they are and simply add the regulative principles to their daily routines. Yeah. So, in other words, it's suited to everyone.
Yeah.
It's suited to everyone. And that's the genius of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and also following on from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada. They was able to read the world and see the need and act with the compassion of Lord Chaitanya in spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world, giving them, as we explained, giving them ultimately Raganuga Bhakti in perfectional stages, but through the practice externally of Vaidhi Bhakti. So it's open to everyone. I mean, who's going to go to Radha Kund? Who's a mass of people going to take up such practices? Yeah, especially if we're not free from anarthas. So it's open to that. At least those who all have like pure faith in the process. Yeah, even if we're not free of anarthas. So the exoteric, the external, bahipanta, is more difficult than the esoteric. Yeah, if there's two words you're going to remember from today, it's esoteric and exoteric. So next time you hear these words, you'll be able to perhaps have some understanding of their meaning and their use in this context. Yeah. So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
yes, Nima. Yeah.
This question, Prabhu, my God, this is very difficult for me, Prabhu.
Yeah, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible.
I know, but I just wanted to ask this question, Prabhu.
Yes.
Now, a sadhaka like me, if I go to Radha Kund, when I visit Vrindavan, if I go and if I think, okay, it's not to give the name of fame, just to concentrate on Srimati Radharani, okay, let me sit down and chant some rounds. It is not to attain any of these, it is just like a simple sadhaka. Will that be
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's not get confused here. Radha Kund is a sacred place. And whenever we go to Vrindavan, we should go to Radha Kund. We should pay a prostrate obeisance there. And if we can, why not spend a day there chanting the holy name?
Yeah.
sit there and chant some rounds, you know.
Okay.
I mean, that's a lot different than like you moving from Scotland, you giving up your husband, you're,
No, no.
you're wearing white cloth, and you're living on the banks of Radha Kund. That's yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so when we're speaking like this, let's not become adverse to Radha Kund. We're like
Yeah.
speaking about the philosophical different understandings from the group of Babajis there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's fine. We should go to Radha Kund. It's a sacred place. It's the most sacred place on planet Earth,
Yes.
according to Rupa Goswami.
Mm.
And we'll read about that in the Nectar of Instruction. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Haribol Prabhu,
yes, please.
are they only at Radhakund or all over place in Braj?
Yeah,
These Babajis.
yeah. They're probably yes, I would say. I mean, I'm not a really Vrindavan person. I haven't been there for a number of years, but I mean they will live in different places in Braj. That's for sure. You will find them. So we have to be careful, though. We shouldn't have a critical eye for when we go to Vrindavan. This we have to be careful. We just be neutral. We don't want to be look, there's a Radhakund Babaji. He must be one of these persons who's not qualified, and here he is. So just no, we should be very neutral, but we just be very careful of who we hear from and take shelter. But yeah, I would say probably in different holy spots in Vrindavan, there's different types of Babajis there, you know, and they may be initiated by the Radhakund Babajis and have the same practice, you know, and have the same critic for Bhaktisiddhanta and ISKCON as being Vaikuntha Bhakti and as being a deviation. And they might be, you know, looking after a holy spot somewhere in Vrindavan. But, you know, we don't really, you know, we go, we pay respects, we bow down, and we, you know, we may visit that holy dham and we may have a few little exchanges, but we're really not going to get into ongoing discussion.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Best. Yeah. So we prefer the esoteric practice which was given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Raghunath Das Goswami. Yeah. And that's the path that Bhaktisiddhanta embraced and saw it as being the most relevant to serve the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. And even one of Bhaktisiddhanta, there's a whole other kind of controversy that comes with this, is Bhaktisiddhanta's brother, Lalita Prasad. You may have heard that name. He was adamantly opposed. He was adamantly in the external Bahipanta, and he heavily criticized his brother Bhaktisiddhanta for deviating. Yeah, so sometimes Bhaktisiddhanta would refer to his brother as my Sahaja brother. So they had quite some, yeah, that was quite a disagreement there as well, you know. Now, yeah, so kind of we cultivate our moods of devotion in a kind of somewhat in an undisclosed way. Yeah, so therefore it's less subject to be corrupted. Yeah, and people to fake it, you know, and less subject to ridicule as well. Now Maharaj concludes here. He says, in concluding discussion, it is only fair to admit that there may be qualified Babajis in Radha Kund, so I was mentioning that before, and elsewhere, in Vrindavan, we could say, who properly practice the exoteric path. However, Srila Prabhupada's general comments, along with those of his Guru Maharaj, leaves little room for such exceptional cases. So there may be, but they're pretty exceptional. Yeah. And even if even if it does exist, this esoteric line, whether it's performed properly or not, it is not the process. It's not the viable process for perfection for the overwhelming body of Vaishnavas. Yeah. Is that kind of understood then? Is that kind of clear? Yeah. Nodding heads. Yeah. So again, this is the difference between the Radhakund Babajis and Bhaktisiddhanta and subsequently us. It's concerning the two paths of perfection, which interestingly, they're both bona fide, but one has been subject to be greatly corrupted and practiced by unqualified people with disastrous results, where the other one has flowered into a global Vaishnav community. Yeah, thanks to the preaching of Srila Prabhupada and his followers. Yeah. So that's the critique that they offer to us as members of ISKCON, and you may never enter into discussion with one, but interesting at the end of Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, Maharaj relates to different stages of devotion in a story form, and we will read that. And the story, as it unfolds, someone joins ISKCON and he becomes attracted. He really gets into bhajan, is meditating on Lord Chaitanya's, on Radha Krishna's pastimes, and he gets attracted to a Radhakund Babaji, and he leaves, and that's part of the story. Yeah. And then he eventually comes back. His friends go to preach to him. That's the story at the end of this book, actually. That example is that, because it's happened in this book. Yeah.
Just
All right.
one. So it could be because you get attracted by the external looks, what they dress, how they talk, whatever. And then once you're there, you realize it's not internal. It's not purifying you.
Well, it may be purifying you, but whether it's the path for you at that particular time or whether it's the path for you is something else. So you have to be really careful, because these persons will speak about Radha Krishna's pastimes, and it's very attractive. It may be very attractive to you. Yeah. So, but we should never take up the path of the Babaji.
Yeah.
We should, okay. Yeah. Best to hear from our inner circle, actually. Best to hear from our inner circle within our International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So many wonderful advanced Vaishnavas. That's the safe place to be, really. That's safe, So if you're going to hear from someone who used to be in ISKCON, but he's not in ISKCON now, and they speak a lot about Radha Krishna. I mean, I just wouldn't go there just on that basis. I just wouldn't go listen. I'll be very respectful, but I wouldn't sit down and listen.
But he wasn't ISKCON before.
No,
That's
Now
and I got going through, a devotee from Soho who is there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the details of what happened. I don't know the details of what happened there, and I'm not exactly. I'm sure we're all saying who it is. We haven't mentioned his name. We'll mention to Sunita Priya after. But all the details I don't know. But he is what Maharaj is establishing here to attain, because in one sense he's doing that sets a really bad precedent, because those in ISKCON think, oh, I'm not going to attain perfection unless I do Astikalya Smarana and become Babaji. So that may be his personal choice and path. And I think I even heard him say that this is for me, it's not for everyone. But still, But Maharaj, Sivarama Swami is again and again, and all of our spiritual masters are saying, perfection can absolutely in every way and form be achieved by following Prabhupada's mandate. Yeah. There's no need to go outside. I'm sure we've all heard that so many times.
Definitely, I remember Bhakti
so many
Maharaj
times.
was so
Bhakti
much.
Swami would say it again and again and again.
Again, yeah, it's very true.
This is really. Prabhu, I was thinking there was one devotee, I don't know, he did volunteer. I think he's from New Zealand. He went to Vrindavan. He was from Soho. He was there in Soho. And then he started, I think in United States somewhere, he met Maharaj. I think maybe it's the same Maharaj maybe, but he started writing because he had some WhatsApp messages. Then the way he writes things are very, very different. You know, I'm just referring, when you spoke about all this, I was thinking about this devotee, what happened to him. He's not ISKCON now.
Yeah, so so it was an issue in Bhaktisiddhanta's day, and it's still sometimes it's an issue now with devotees, even now today, as Maharaj said, without knowing. That's why this kind of lesson is quite good, because it can protect us, so we cannot be guiled.
And we can be aware of it as well.
Yes, you're aware of it. No?
And another thing, once I heard in a Zoom meeting with Banusami Maharaj. I can't remember which books he was, because lots of translations he's doing. Banusami Maharaj. And he mentioned, one devotee was asking, he said, ask your spiritual master first read all books, Srila Prabhupada's all the books, and then ask your spiritual master whether you can read these books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. He was said that.
And Vishnu Thakur and others, Raghunath. That's that should be where we go. You know, we should get blessings and permissions for reading. For reading and studying on these subjects. Say the subjects of more spontaneous devotion. So it's good. Yeah, that's what the spiritual master is there for. You know, that's why we took initiation. You know, it means we take permission and we get blessings and guidance, and we take guidance. Yeah. All right. Now let's 4 minutes left. We might just get through this part, and then we're going to get to this part. In different upper sampradayas with Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions, and quite interestingly, I was just before this class, I was writing these here, and then I remembered I actually have a book which explains all of these upper sampradayas. This book here, the upper sampradayas by H.H Swami. So probably next week we'll get into that. Can explain each one. We're not going to get there today, that's for sure. So these Saki Beki Sahajias and Sahajias, okay? So so Saki Beki, so they're persons who basically see here as they dress as gopis, because I was just reading in this book a little bit about them a bit more, because the idea is that Krishna is attracted to gopis. So if you're dressed like a gopi, Krishna become attracted to you. Even if you're a man, because Krishna likes gopis, if you shave twice a day and you speak in a high feminine voice and you dress like a gopi and you have all the mannerisms of a lady, you will attract Krishna, will become attracted to you. That's nonsense, no? That's what they believe. Yeah. So they think, I'll just read it. These foolish men think that adopting the dress and behavior of a Rajrasi it helps to cultivate Raj Bhakti. And that way gives them access to Krishna's pastimes. Yeah. So they are another example of sadhakas who want to take a shortcut to perfection. So they mistake their material body for what's known as the Siddha Deha, your perfected spiritual form. Yeah. So to basically just make a mockery out of pure devotion. And this is the atmosphere that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was preaching in. Again, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings have been completely obscured by all of these. Yeah, they've been completely obscured, and Vaishnavas were seen from higher class societies being no more than debauchees or, etc. So that's the great work that Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, and also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur continue to do. Marge mentions here that they make a mockery out of pure devotion. And they engage in, again, as I think I mentioned last time, that for them, it doesn't really matter. They can engage in sinful acts. The main thing is to dress like Gopi and to attract Krishna. Yeah, I mean, that's really it. That's sinful, and basically they're descending to lower species of life. Samudara Radhika has raised her hand.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Yeah, I just wanted to kindly ask, what is the destination of these sahajas? Because they live in Vraj, and whatever their method of worship is wrong. But if they leave their body, they say there's a saying that if you leave your body in Vraj, you go back to Godhead. So is that correct? Will they go back to Godhead, or what will be their destination?
That's the sastric statement, but they have to stop off first in Vraj again. And next time you go to Vrindavan and you see a hog swimming in stool in a sewer, that's the birth they have to go through before achieving such perfection.
Okay, thank you.
Next time you see a monkey in Vrindavan, or you can, oh yeah. But yeah, well, that's the sastric statement, isn't it? It's quite an amazing statement. That it's difficult to really understand, but there it is. That's what it says. If you die in Vraj, but if you but you might not go there straight away, especially if you've been engaged in sinful activities in Vrindavan. Yeah. So then next week we'll describe a little bit about this, the different upper sampradayas. Yeah, we don't have time to get into it now. We'll stop there. Okay, so I hope that is a little bit clear. We've kind of understood the difference between the philosophy of the Radha Kund Babajis and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our path, and where it originated from, and the merits of our path as in compared to their path. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, quite technical class, but I think it's good to hear this.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you everyone for your kind attention, and look forward to tomorrow's reading, which is the
Nectar
of devotion.
Instruction, yeah.
Nectar of instruction, nectar of devotion. So nectar of instruction. Okay. Thank you everyone. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Muli Prabhu ki jai. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.